right. Hey, Dr. Jerry Ross, VP for Enrollment Management at Marshall University. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. We're really happy to be here on this and kind of talk about Marshall University and the journey we're on.
I can't wait, and I always love to start with your personal journey. And I always like to open up with who are the mentors that really help shape your path?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. So many people kind of help you along the way in your journey, but I've been really fortunate to work with some people that have really advanced my career, helped me grow as a professional, but just learn the ins and outs of enrollment management. So just probably three people I would identify. Pam Horn, who was the chief enrollment officer at Purdue University for years. I got to work for her for a few years before she retired and taught me a lot about enrollment management as an art and a science. Steve Robinson, who's now at University of Missouri. I worked for him when he was at West Virginia University. Got to learn a lot about leadership and change management from him. It was a pretty dynamic environment we were in at the time. And then lastly, Denise Runge, who is now the provost at University of Alaska Anchorage. I've known her since I was a graduate student in my master's program a very long time ago. And then she has moved up in academia and leadership and been provost at a couple institutions, but taught me so much about leadership itself, leading with compassion, but also maintaining a strategic vision at the same time.
So what drew you to higher education and enrollment leadership?
Well, I'm a first generation college student. I was that student in college who needed everything possible to get over the finish line. I needed Pell Grants, I needed student loan scholarships, and everything that went into it. And started college, had no idea what I was doing, didn't know, made the wrong college choice for all the wrong reasons, followed some friends to college and ended up pivoting to a community college and then ultimately to my alma mater, which is University of Southern Mississippi. But I started my professional journey actually working in professional politics and worked on Capitol Hill in DC, but always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to go to higher ed. Didn't know what I wanted to do, but took a entry-level job back at my alma mater, got involved in student success and enrollment management work, and that really just kind of grew and developed from there, and fell in love with enrollment management, helping students who get on that pathway to higher ed, be successful once they get there. That's kind of my sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting journey too, going from Capitol Hill now into higher education. So how did that transition come about?
Now, somewhat intentionally, somewhat by a happy accident. I had done some adjunct work at a local community college while I was working in DC. Thought I might want to make a shift to higher ed at some point, and then just got lucky in that Denise, who I mentioned earlier, was an associate dean at the time. She had an opening. I saw it back at my alma mater, and it wasn't just a entry level job working with some online programs. Got exposed to a little of everything in that role because this was 2005, early in online education was really starting to grow in popularity. So that really gave me a foothold into higher ed, but also just experience a number of different things that I got to test out different pieces of higher education.
And so now let's talk a little bit about Marshall in West Virginia. So what attracted you to Marshall, and what opportunity did you see at the institution to really make a meaningful impact?
I love institutions like Marshall. My alma mater, University of Southern Mississippi, is a similar type institution, very access focused, very first gen heavy, but also maintain a strong academic profile. Marshall's an R2 institution. I worked in some more highly selective institutions. I worked at the big R1 flagships in my career. But a few years ago, I came to that realization that my preference is to work for institutions that serve students like me. And when the Marshall job came open, I had read a lot about what was going on at Marshall. Marshall had just hired a new president a year and a half or so before that. He was the first alum to come into the presidency, and his name is Brad Smith. Non-traditional president, came from the corporate world, had been CEO of Intuit in the tech sector, but had come home to serve. And as the 38th president of Marshall. And I was really excited by what they were trying to do, the strategic roadmap they were on of trying to set the university up where they want to have all 100% of students graduate with zero student loan debt by the year 2037. Growing students, not fees, on-demand, in-demand curriculum, emphasis on workforce and economic development at the same time through our 6 strategic pillars. And all of that was just really intriguing. I was just really excited by what President Smith was trying to build at the university, and to strategically reorient Marshall, but also higher education in general. And Marshall's mission, kind of that anchor institution within higher ed, not just in West Virginia, but part of Appalachia in general, that really was an intriguing opportunity. And every step along the way through the search process, from the first call with the search consultant to the campus visit, just everything I thought about Marshall was confirmed or amplified. And just the place that it holds. Everybody knows the story of Marshall from the We Are Marshall movie and the 1970 tragic plane crash. But the story is so much deeper than that, and the quality of the education, the depth and breadth of who we are. And it was just a perfect alignment of what I was looking for and what Marshall was trying to get to at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully Randy Moss comes back to see some of the sporting events too.
I think he does. I think he does. Yeah, he's still pretty active, I think, in the community. From Rand, West Virginia, so he's still pretty active and comes around from time
Well,
to time.
and I'll tell you, I love the fact that you wanted to work at an institution where you felt like, hey, the students, I can really relate to these students, because you can speak to this a lot better than I can, but I can only imagine that ability for you to talk to parents and students and really, truly having come from living in their shoes. and
Yeah.
and I think that must go a long way.
There's a story that I like to tell from early in my time here. We were at a high school event, and we do these signing day events where we essentially try to replicate a student athlete signing experience for regular students. And we were at a school in rural West Virginia, and a dad came up to me and he said, I was the first generation in my family to graduate high school, and now my son is getting ready to come to Marshall. And that's made possible through our financial aid, the way we really structure it, the way we aggressively help students find a pathway to pay for it, but also support them once they get here and let them find their home. And that's not lost on me, that the duty that we have to
Yeah.
get the students here, but help them be successful.
Right. Well, and I love the idea of the signing
Yeah.
experience like an athlete. That is really cool. So I'm just trying to picture that. What does that look like on I guess, would it be a high school campus for a
on
traditional student?
on a high school campus, and we go, and usually it's in the auditorium or it's in the gym, and we invite the students, the parents are oftentimes included. We take Marco, our mascot. We've had some members of the pep band there. We often have a student athlete come as a speaker, or somebody else as a speaker. President Smith usually goes.
Wow.
We have a little form that they sign that's like signing a letter of intent that they're coming to Marshall, and they are really a fun event to do. They're a lot of work, but seeing the emotion in the students, how proud they are, how proud the parents are in this, it's a reminder that you're not just changing a student's life, you're changing
Yeah.
a family tree in this, and you're changing the family that's here today, the family that's coming after, and that it's a good grounding event for why we do what we do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that gets me excited just thinking and picturing that and how what an impact that must have on that student. But to your point, Dr. Ross, also the family. I mean, just the excitement around that day.
Yeah, they get there's a lot of tears that come at it from a happy, joyful tear standpoint, and
Yeah.
they're fun. We do several of them. We get as many times with President Smith as we can each spring for these events, and then we have some others who will join in and help. We do as many as we can pull off in a given recruiting cycle, and they're impactful for the students, which is why we're here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about some of the enrollment headwinds some of the higher education headwinds, I should say. In particular, you look at the enrollment cliff and the impact that that has on institutions. And something you alluded to earlier, I'd love for you to expand upon is, that debt load sometimes that families take on and the burden that can create. So that's the second piece, and then the third piece, just kind of bundling these elements all in one question. The third piece would really be just I think the value, and just how that's being challenged more so today, maybe than ever. The value of maybe not an education, but the value of a degree, and what does that mean in the workforce? So can you speak to those elements and how does Marshall take that head on?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about the value proposition of higher education, but specifically Marshall. We do incredibly well. Students return on investment for every dollar they spend at Marshall for their uh, tuition. They make back and then some pretty quickly because we've worked hard to keep tuition as low as possible. We have some really creative things around our tuition, but we have in-state, we have what we call our metro rate, which extends into Kentucky and Ohio, 150 miles. So it's less than out of state, but it's a little bit more than our in-state. And then we have that Marshall for All tuition-free program for West Virginia residents making $65,000 and below. They come with all their tuition and university fees covered. So we've invested in our students to help them achieve the dream of higher education without the burden of a student loan debt wherever possible. So that piece is something that we're really proud of, and it's part of our strategic roadmap. But what we've worked really hard to do is explain higher education to students, explain the value of the Marshall education, and talk about just those things, the value piece. What we're hearing, and surveys have shown this, is that Gen Alpha and this generation of students that's coming in the next few years, they're they're willing to maybe trade down a little bit in prestige for a little bit better value in higher education, and that they know they're still going to get a great high quality education, but they don't have to go somewhere where they're going to incur tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt to achieve the same thing. So that's where we're really leaning into is the high quality, high value education that Marshall has.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you just addressed, all the major challenges that a lot of institutions across the country really see. So I absolutely appreciate that. And when you look at what Marshall brings to the table, you had mentioned this earlier, and I think this is something that is really critical as you look at your president who came from the corporate world, who now is leading Marshall University with his experience and then with the academic side and leaders as well. That combination of being able to align program with that workforce development and finding a job that aligns is so critical. So with with the addition of the president and also just that alignment, what does that look like? How are you making sure that you're aligning programs, whether they be on campus or online, with that degree, but also more importantly, that job.
Yeah. So part of that strategic roadmap is also, and we call it our moonshot. And we know that these things are lofty goals, but 100% zero student loan debt, but also 100% job placement at
Mm.
the end of their 4 years at Marshall University. And our grad school or whatever that is next for them. These are big audacious goals. But what we're trying to do is kind of embed as much as we can throughout the process to help students get there, whether it's internships, co-ops, those things that help them find that first job. And then we have invested in um, our career education, we've invested in those things, but we've also started to move more and more online, just like many institutions. We've increased the number of our uh, master's programs, but also bachelor's programs and micro credentials and certificates and things like that that are available online. Because what we want is Marshall to be not just the educational partner for today, but the educational partner for a lifetime. So if you need upskilling, reskilling down the road, we're here to help. We have what we're really proud of is our Marshall Advanced Manufacturing Center as well, where we train several thousand students every year in the trades where
Hmm.
they're not working in a degree at Marshall, but they're coming through this program and they're studying welding, they're studying plumbing, they're studying those things like that that help them go into the trades and serve critical needs in that. And it's very closely aligned with our community and technical college partners in those efforts. And it's a really, really innovative thing that Marshall has going that we're super proud of.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, how do you define student success?
You know, that's a we could probably spend several episodes just on that. But, I don't think I define it significantly different. We track all these metrics for student success. How they do in their first semester, their persistence from year one to year two, uh, their 4-year graduation rate, their 6-year graduation rate. But I really kind of summarize it as students who are making their progress towards their stated objectives and goals. And that's going to vary from one student to the next. Some students are going to need something very different. They're okay, they're going to take a little bit longer to graduate because they're working full time or they are pursuing a family and they're doing these things while they're studying. But others, they're very hyper focused on, I'm going to get my degree as soon as possible. And that's where we really try to tailor our advising and our processes to each individual student's needs and what they're trying to get to. But of course, we track all the same metrics everybody else does for student success, but we're we're really trying to increase our first year retention rates as a pathway to improve those 4-year and 6-year graduation rates.
Well, and I love the fact how Marshall stays connected to the student after even after graduation. And so as you had mentioned, the upskilling, the reskilling, the skills around welding and plumbing. To me, I think that's such a great marriage when you look at earning your degree. Let's say you're a traditional on-campus student, you earn
Mhm.
your 4-year degree and whatever that might be, business or journalism or criminal justice, et cetera. But then also being able to come back, and being able to be tied to the community, tied to the institution. I would imagine the value in having those alums connected to be able to come back on a consistent basis really benefits the university. I mean, even from a referral source standpoint.
Yeah, it does. And, the alumni are really passionate about it. And we have what we call we have 4 layers of student support that every student gets from day one. And they're assigned what we call a friend at Marshall, a FAM, that is a student. And they're trying to help them in that first year. They have their advisor, they have their faculty mentor, and then they have an alumni mentor when they get closer to graduation. And it's this, full wraparound service model that's designed to help students be successful here today and in that first job post university. And it's the Herd Connect program. We name a lot of stuff after the herd, as you can imagine. But
Sure.
it is truly a comprehensive program that's designed to help students before they get set foot on campus be successful. Those students, those FAMs, the friend at Marshall, they're connecting with students before they set foot on campus during the summer for orientation and before they start their week of welcome and their first day on the campus in the fall.
So now I'll ask you to pull out the crystal ball and look ahead 5 years, where do you see Marshall University?
Well, we are working to we had like a lot of institutions, we came out of COVID and we had a strategic parameter to fix a structural deficit that we had financially. And to get out of that, we've been growing enrollment. We've grown enrollment about 20% over the last 3 years. Freshman class about 24%, almost 25%, on a pathway for fall 26 to do that as well. And if we continue on this path, by the end of FY27, we're going to be out of that structural deficit. And then that's going to allow us to just continue reinvesting things into the university and into our students and our faculty and staff so that we can move through towards those 2037 goals and that Marshall for All, Marshall Forever strategic roadmap that we're working towards. So those moonshot goals that I've talked about for our students and for the community. And that's 5 years is hard to say because we know where this journey we're on is it's not a 5 year thing. It's, as our president likes to say, this isn't a turnaround, it's a transformation that we're on. And those things aren't easy or short timed, but we're on a really good path right now. And because of the work that's happened, the entire campus leaning into our strategic enrollment efforts, that has really been transformative for our work of getting students here, keeping them here, and helping them be successful.
Well, excellent. Well, and just as you alluded to, that was that was a pretty clear path and definitive benchmarks that you're achieving. I mean, that trend for Marshall University is absolutely on the uptick and heading upward. So, Dr. Jerry Ross, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for helping us learn more about you and Marshall University.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and look forward to continuing the conversation later.